Hello and welcome to SAE Tomorrow Today. I'm your host, Grayson Brulte. On today's episode, we're absolutely honored to have Ben Landon, Vice President of Business Development at Cyngn, and Scott Breckley, President, Columbia Vehicle Group. On today's episode, we discuss the partnership between the Columbia Vehicle Group and Cyngn, and how together they are optimizing industrial warehouses with autonomy. We hope you enjoy this episode. Gentlemen, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Thanks, Grayson.
Super excited to have you here because partnerships are the present and they are the future. And what Columbia and Cyngn's developing, in my humble opinion, is pretty special. Ben, Cyngn recently announced the Drive Mod Kit. It's a turnkey autonomous vehicle solution. To level set, can you talk about the kit, please?
Yeah, the Drive Mod Kit essentially pre-integrates all of the hardware that we need to turn on our autonomous vehicle software into Columbia Stock Chasers is the lead vehicle that we've designed this Drive Mod Kit for. It's got some applicability to other similarly form-factored vehicles, but the beauty of it is that it essentially streamlines and simplifies the process for getting all of the fancy hardware ranging from sensors to computers to motor controllers and everything in between, all into the vehicle in less of a snowflake. Every vehicle has a ton of different things that you need to do to it, into more of a single step type of solution when it comes to AV hardware integration.
Do you feel that's one of the primary benefits of the Drive Mod Kit?
The benefit of it is certainly the efficiency that it creates, in that it also creates a common process, whether we are attaching it to a new vehicle that's rolling off the Columbia vehicle assembly line, or whether we're putting it onto a vehicle that's already out in the field through a retrofit process. So that's really what the brilliance of this Drive Mod Kit is. It's that it creates commonality between those two processes. So we effectively become agnostic as to whether we are upgrading vehicles that are out in the field for customers or producing new ones that are autonomous for customers to make new purchases or license those vehicles. And that is really a boon for us in terms of how we can serve customers and the market opportunity that it creates by being able to have a common process for the retrofit vehicles, which is a fairly large fleet of vehicles that's out there already in the wild that can still create a lot of value.
Scott, Ben mentioned that the Drive Mod Kit was originally developed for Columbia Stock Chaser vehicles, which are found in warehouses around the world. Taking a step back for a moment, how did that relationship first come about? Did Ben call you? Did you call Ben? How did that relationship form in the early days?
Columbia was already investigating providers in the space, looking to see what was out there and what opportunities might exist. We discovered Cyngn as a part of that search and quickly found that we had shared values and corporate culture and a strong material handling focus being both of our goals. And based on that, we started learning more about Cyngn's technology and their strategy, and then just really kind of naturally fell into what we believe was the beginning of a good partnership and has developed even better than we expected.
That's a wonderful sign. As you're using the technology, how are you utilizing it in the everyday workflow of Columbia for your customers?
Honestly, I'm sure we have yet to discover all of the ways that we're going to be able to add value to our customers as we adapt Cyngn's technology. But right now, we certainly can help customers who need flexibility and who are having trouble increasing headcount, throughput being important to them. So I think those are areas we're really looking to bring value to our customer network. Drive Mod Kits also allow the manual operation of our stock chasers by humans when not in autonomous mode. So this allows folks to adapt the product to their changing needs as things, as we know, never stay the same. And the thing we love is, Ben's already mentioned that the technology is retrofittable to fleet users that already have stock chasers in service.
How are stock chasers being used today by your customers?
So for the most part, stock chasers are used to either chase stock, which implies where the name came from, obviously, or to tow trailers, which is the primary use for horizontal material movement, right? Through combined spaces that are both indoors and outdoors, mostly indoors. And as such, we have a narrow aisle capability so we can really help in those areas where space is important. And that becomes even more important when you're in an autonomous vehicle, that you have the ability to maneuver in such tight spaces.
I'm thinking, I have this vision of a giant warehouse, multiple city blocks. There's a stock chaser running around there. An individual puts it on, I don't say, toilet paper or Bounty put on there and then bring it back to get sorted? Is that how they're being used in these giant warehouses?
Yeah, often that's the case. We see ourselves doing that, but also because it's a tow vehicle, for the most part, we find customers are just attaching 1, 2, 3, 4, up to 20, 25 tracking trailers and either loading that equipment through other means or manually or automatically as well.
Wow. Ben, can the Drive Mod kit work with what Scott described, up to 25 trailers?
We haven't towed 25 yet. It starts to become less of a question for the Drive Mod kit and more of a question for the underlying autonomous vehicle technology, primarily the path planning aspect, because you need to account for this long tail that that is trailing behind you, that is obviously an extension of just the ego vehicle. You now have articulated elements that are behind the vehicle. So we have towed multiple carts. We'll continue adding to that number. We haven't gotten up to 25 yet.
I'm gonna be a kid for a moment. It's like if the Lionel train's set and you keep adding on cars to the train as you get better and better going around the tracks.
Exactly. The difference being that the point of the game when you're a kid is how many carts can I get on there before it turns a corner and topples over, and that's not the end objective. We are going to avoid that. That's not going to happen to us out in the field. It's going to be tested to the nth degree, and there will be no tipping or clipping or anything like that.
That's why children aren't running the company. That's fascinating. So you have that use case with Columbia, and then just looking at the new material handling vehicles globally, the top 10 suppliers account for 883,000 units sold every year. Looking at that market, that's a very large market. How are you planning to scale the Drive Mod kit installation base?
There's an element of depth and an element of breadth. So for depth, with great companies and partners that we have, like we do with Columbia, we choose a vehicle that has a great use case that we know is going to bring value to customers. And then it's a matter of how many of those vehicles can we get into the hands of customers. And because stock chasers are just a piece of that large number that you mentioned, right? That includes various other forklifts and pallet jacks and tow tractors. And so that's where the breadth comes into play. So in parallel to once we've productized a vehicle, as we have with the Columbia Stock Chaser, and proliferating that with customers, in parallel, we're bringing up new vehicles for the material handling space, because most customers don't use a single type of vehicle as well. So the moment that we have a second vehicle, a third vehicle, and Columbia's got a whole lineup of, correct me, Scott, I think it's a little over half a dozen vehicles that you've got in your lineup. That means with each one of those that we bring up, we can then repeat that depth element of the equation and get more and more vehicles into the hands of customers, many times already existing customers that we've already gone and won some stock chaser or some previous type of vehicle business with. And that is really one of our strong suits. It is based on the thesis that we had 6 years ago when we started developing autonomous vehicles, that it's really the software that should define the vehicle, that would allow our system to be vehicle agnostic, so that we could take this multi-vehicle offering to our customers, because I think that's really what they're going to need if you fast forward into the future of truly getting automation across customer operations.
I would say you're creating value for Scott and for Scott's customers. Scott, you have a lineup of vehicles. How long do those vehicles stay in use by your customers?
Quite a while. Most of our installs operate well for at least 6-7 years, but we have a large number in service that I've watched being built 2 and even 3 decades ago. So product does tend to stay around, and that's another one of the benefits of the Cyngn application and solution, right, is that as that product stays in the field, there's not been a lot of change in the basic configuration of things like stock chasers over those years. So it really allows a larger opportunity for Cyngn and ourselves to penetrate market spaces that we don't always need to build a new vehicle for.
I'll ask you a scenario, Ben. Let's say Scott has a customer, it's called Acme Logistics or Acme Warehousing, and they call Scott up and say, Scott, we see you have a partnership with Cyngn. Can we automate our stock chasers that are, let's say, in the field 3 to 4 years? Can you retrofit those vehicles that are currently out there in the field, Ben?
That is one of my favorite questions that I could get from the field. The answer is yes. It's essentially, it becomes a question of how many would you like to start automating first? And that's the beauty of this approach too. I think one of the reasons that the world is clamoring for automation, but that adoption has not delivered to the excitement or to the known need, is that it can be a non-trivial undertaking for a company to mothball their fleet, to take on the new capex of brand new vehicles, to sometimes change operations completely because certain vehicles, this isn't true of our vehicles, but certain vehicles need very tightly controlled environments to be able to work in an automated fashion. We solve that by having more of we call it a robo-taxi capability within our vehicles, so we can deal with mixed traffic, we can deal with other vehicles. But the big takeaway here is that we found a few different ways to lower that hurdle to adoption for customers. So Scott touched on the one where by us making a vehicle autonomous, we don't remove the ability for it to be operated manually. So it might make sense for a customer to only operate part of a shift autonomously while the workforce really learns how to integrate into the workflow and get comfortable with it, or still do things that they need to do that are kind of oddball tasks. We also have this ability to retrofit vehicles that are already out in the field so that we remove that CapEx concern, that mothballing of assets that still have a lot of useful lifetime on them. And so that question of, I've got these in the field, I want to retrofit them, is a fantastic step one, because it gets us in the door in a way that is really conducive to how the customer wants to adopt, and that I would expect in most cases then results in them a year or two later also ultimately licensing vehicles that are coming off the line ready to go for autonomy. And it's a very natural adoption path for the customers.
Scott, is that one of the advantages of why you went with Syngent? Because your vehicles are in the field for a long period of time, that a customer calls you up and that you can retrofit those vehicles. They don't have to say, we have to buy a brand new vehicle. You can add, if you want to use the term, you can give them the add-on capability after it's already been in use?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think as we look at our organization, we don't simply build product. We really do try to solve customer problems. And customers often come to us, and those solutions sometimes do not involve buying brand new vehicles. So this is another great example of where we can come to our customer and who already has 20, 30, 40, 50 of these type of units in their operation, and deliver them a solution that doesn't require that CapEx, doesn't require, a completely mothballing, has been said, of the fleet, or any other changes to what they're already used to. It also helps in things like technical support. It helps with their mechanics and those people who are caring for that product. The basic product doesn't change. But we have this great benefit of adding the Syngent Drive Mod Kit to basically do the driving that they no longer have the resources or ability to handle themselves.
Columbia's creating value for your customers. Syngent's helping you create value for their customers. There's a win-win going on here. Ben, as Syngent scales the industrial sector, you work with Scott and your deployment numbers grow and warehouses. What have you learned during that time to say, aha, we can improve this, or we can do this, or we can do that better?
I would say there are two big takeaways that I've had. One is all over the zeitgeist at the moment, which is when folks talk automation, there was oftentimes this concern that what automation would do would be to replace jobs. I think with what we've seen in the macroeconomy, what we hear constantly on the news, and even from President Biden when he addresses the country, is that the problem is that we're not able to fill these jobs now. And there's studies that show that if we don't fill the jobs that are currently going unfilled, there's an estimated $1 trillion potential loss to US GDP by 2030. So that completely shifted the conversation from one of concern from very careful customers into an absolute necessity to add to their ability as opposed to replacing. So we've seen much more of an addition and an augmentation. And we've even gotten at this point testimonials from not just the managers that we engage with at customers, like at fulfillment centers, but we've heard through them that they've actually had people who work on the floor complain once our vehicles are taken offline at their facility. For example, if we take them back to provide them an updated version, they've actually gone and complained and gone to management and said, "Where's my autonomous vehicle that I was using?" So I think that was really a huge turning point for me. It was a major validation that what we're doing is really going to bring value up and down the workforce. And that second piece kind of ties in. I've been working in autonomous vehicles since the hype started 6 or 7 years ago. And back then, a lot of my conversations were convincing potential customers of why autonomy was important, why AI could solve problems that they didn't realize that humans were actually not doing all that great of a job solving. And if you fast forward to today, I get inbound now from 100-plus-year-old companies that have been doing a very kind of old, let's call it, type of business a certain way for a very long time. And these folks are reaching out to me and saying, when can my vehicles start driving themselves? And that has been a massive shift in the acceptance of the technology. Established
companies are adopting this. Columbia Vehicle Group, Scott, you're an established company. Company's been around for 70 years. I want to give a really cool shout out here because we talked about this offline, but the one and the only chairman of the board, Frank Sinatra, rode in the Columbia Vehicle Group electric vehicle in Las Vegas. Very, very cool, Scott. As you continue to produce these electric vehicles, will you add autonomy and those other features? Then will you have the next Frank Sinatra on the vehicle when it's autonomous?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's no doubt about where autonomy is going in the marketplace. And, it obviously has a lot of opportunity in there in moving, equipment and people and things of this nature for years to come, I believe. And we already have plans to continue to expand into our other products. You heard Ben talk about the half a dozen basic families of products we have. And so we're already on track to begin that process in the not too distant future with our payload, or what we call our burden carrier series. And in addition, we also see that not only fully autonomous vehicles are in front of us, but opportunities for operator drive assist and fleet optimization and management, as well as other value-added features that flow from this technology. I think they're all going to find their way into our vehicle solutions soon.
Being 70 years old, how did the company start, and how did you get to the point where today where you're fully embracing autonomy and making it a product offering?
I think, as our original founders saw, it was about innovation and finding a need and filling it, the old adage. And I don't think that's changed. And as we see the changes in the economy that we live in and the business environment that we're all in today, the socioeconomical situation that we're all dealing with, I think we're constantly on the lookout for how can we take our product, how can our product help, how can our product assist, and then how do we provide those kind of solutions and value to our customers. And so I think autonomy is not just one more tool, but a really important shift in the industry for all the reasons Ben's already shared. And I think if we can be a part of that, it just continues to, cement our position in that 70 years, probably for 70 years forward.
Yeah, now the company's awesome. It's 140 years old and you're still rocking and rolling. So go Team Columbia Vehicle Group. Ben, Scott mentioned he's looking at potentially bringing new products online. As he brings on new products, or you have another customer brings on new products, are there any vehicle restrictions when it comes to installing the Drive Mod kit?
The simple answer is no, there aren't. It just becomes a sliding scale in terms of level of effort for bringing up a new vehicle. Now, let's call it the good news now that it's behind us. The Stock Chaser was on the difficult end of the spectrum, because while what it's got going for it is that it's a relatively simple vehicle. That's why it can work and do hard work for as many years as it does. It's not a vehicle that was built for autonomy, at least not the models that we were originally working on. So we had quite a lot of work to do in terms of replacing controllers, using lead acid batteries when we wanted to be on lithium ion batteries. But the beauty of that is that it took us through this process together with Columbia, where we made multiple revisions to the hardware that we were putting on the vehicle to make it autonomous. And what came out on the other end of that is what you've seen in our most recent press releases, which is the shiny version with the nice white, which white we just did for marketing. It's not really great for work. It shows a lot of dirt. They're going to be probably a black or a gray when they're out in the field. But it produced that really nice next generation technology looking product that has everything integrated and has a configuration, a BOM from Columbia that is conducive to simplifying that drive mod integration. And essentially what we did was we worked together to make the first autonomy ready stock chasers roll off the assembly line. And I don't think anybody else can say that they've optimized that type of vehicle for autonomous operation like we have with Columbia.
Wow. So, Scott, so Columbia vehicles are coming off the assembly line with the drive mod kits already installed in factory grade?
We're just about there. Yeah, you've heard all the work that Ben talked about, and it's been a lot of work on both sides of the house, and we're appreciative of the cooperation that we've got as we work through those changes we needed to make to our vehicle to be accepting of the drive mod kit. So we've not yet installed our first, but all of the training work and the planning work and the logistics is now going into place so that is in the near future exactly how we're going to do it.
Yeah, the first installations were done by retrofit. So the first drive mod builds have been installed on several stock chasers through retrofit. And now, as Scott said, that next step is to mirror that in the end of line.
And Scott, it was probably addressed to you. Are there any weight restrictions with the stock chaser when you're using a drive mod kit? Do you have to reduce weight? Are there any restrictions running around an industrial complex such as a warehouse?
No, as a matter of fact, just the opposite is true. Because we control all aspects of that vehicle operation, including speed, braking, and other driving behavior, we anticipate that we're actually going to be able to increase our towing capacity rating as we move forward. Of course, we have some testing to do to confirm all of that, but that's certainly in the plans. It's certainly possible. We see no reason why that won't be in our future.
Is there a limit to how many of the Columbia Chasers could be running in a warehouse at one time? I'm asking because I'm just using me as an example, or my friend Roger. We have this running joke. Was Amazon at your house today? Was Amazon at your house today? Because it seems every day there's either a book or a kid's toy coming. With that, do you see that just accelerating your business?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, on our side, there's no doubt about it. I mean, from any perspective, when we take a look at logistics and how COVID has changed dramatically, our buying habits and therefore made an increasing demand on throughput in warehousing and distribution centers, that's right in our sweet spot. So with the challenges of finding people, as Ben has already addressed, such a number one issue for most of the manufacturers and distribution operators, I think you're going to continue to see this growing. And people, of course, are starting to learn already that this is not really replacing jobs. It's taking kind of the mundane job, the job that doesn't require a human, and let that human better deploy somewhere else where that brain is really needed and relied upon.
It's well said. You think about, there's the instant click, the one click. You order a book, you order water. Okay, I'll be here in an hour. You're so used to, what do you mean it's going to be 2 days? This is unheard of. It's just that consistency, because the automation is not going to call in sick. It's not going to get tired. It's not going to oversleep, and it's creating value because there are individuals that have to oversee the vehicles, and we have a job shortage, and that's what's leading to the 8.3% inflation rate, which is hurting everybody. Ben, it seems to me what I've uncovered here, you have a really great relationship with Scott and the team at Columbia. How do you see your business relationship evolving over the coming years?
Well, as we mentioned, that lineup, that portfolio of vehicles that Scott and our friends at Columbia have, that's just more and more opportunity, because each of those vehicles serves a different function for customers, ranging from vehicles that are more geared for outdoor operation, which is within our capability to support autonomously, to vehicles that tow higher load capacities or can load up directly higher loads onto the vehicles. So each one of those for us is really just a different variant in automation that is a problem that we can solve. So I really hope that we continue to, as I mentioned before, it's the depth and breadth combination, increase our depth, proliferate the stock chasers that we have productized, and then go and productize the other vehicles and go and solve the problems in an automated fashion that those vehicles can solve to continue to free up more and more people to do the high value jobs that don't require them to sit and drive around a vehicle instead of doing the other things that automation can't do very well at.
Scott, you're getting press. Your stock traces are out there in the wild. I'm a competitor. Aha, his business is growing. I'm going to copy that. Are you seeing competitors to Columbia adding on autonomy based on success that you're having with Syngin?
Well, I imagine that pretty much everybody, if they're not looking at it, have started by now. And they will find a place, maybe or maybe not, in this rapidly evolving space. But while staying abreast of kind of what the competitors are doing, I think we've just found it more beneficial to chart our own course. That's what's kept us going for 70 years with a consistent track record. So I think, what we've always done is look for ways to better serve our customer, to better provide them value. And we think if we can just keep staying focused on that with partnerships with Syngin and continue to develop the breadth of that partnership, as Ben has mentioned, I think our success will outpace anything we've got to worry about what competitors are doing.
Happy customers equals good business, and that's how you're going to be around for another 70 years. They call you up. Hi, Scott, I'd like to order another 10 more vehicles, or I'm opening a new warehouse. Can you bring the Syngin Columbia vehicles over here? That's how you do it. It's relationships.
Absolutely.
Ben, what's next for Syngin?
I would say what's next boils down to scale and repeatability. So autonomous vehicles, for all the progress that we have made over the last several years, and we're at a state where we are ready to go and deploy products with customers. There are still some kinks to be ironed out to go and do that for if you have some of the biggest companies in the world that have thousands of vehicles step in and say, I want those thousands to be automated. There's still some work that needs to be done to reach that level of repeatability across sites, that level of scale. So for us, it's all about building more vehicles, which we're already in progress in doing with Columbia, essentially pressure testing the hell out of those with our first customers. We've done that internally, of course, for years, but really getting them out in the wild so that every little thing can be ironed out and we're really nearing perfection 24/7, 365 with how these vehicles operate. Like we just don't hear from customers unless they have to pick up the phone and address a unique need. That's really where we're focused on getting to, so that this can really do the hockey stick takeoff that I think everybody's expecting at some point. It's a matter of really enabling that so that we do it successfully.
Ben, you have a really interesting, unique insight into autonomy, into the industrial market. I'd love to know, and Scott, I'd like for you to answer this after Ben, possible. What is the future of autonomy, in your opinion, Ben, in the industrial industry?
I think I joke, because it's a kind of a silly little pun, but I joke that the autonomous vehicles are really a vehicle to unlocking data insights that this domain has simply never had. So when you have not just one vehicle, but reach a point where multiple vehicles are driving around a facility, they know where goods are moving, they see what's going on around them. We can generate insights from that in terms of where is traffic slowing down, where are we seeing the most obstacles, and that starts to get into the vehicles, just by nature of doing the work that they're doing, passively collecting data and creating insight that customers can then actually use to change how they do things and make them better, not just by automating, but by actually inherently changing their workflows, I think is where we're really going to get. It's providing that level of data insight that is really going to be the big key that unlocks values that I frankly think that we can't even necessarily fathom right now, because it's just not quite there yet.
Scott, your thoughts, please?
Yeah, I think to add to what Ben has already shared, I think that data really is going to be the foundational point for helping customers do what customers do best if they know what that data is all about, right? If we can help them understand the frequency with which things are moving or not moving, how that interplays with the balance of their equipment and so forth. We've always seen that anytime we introduce anything new into a customer environment, they're pretty good at adapting and teaching us as well. So as we learn together, I think that I don't want to use the analogy that the sky is the limit, because of course there's a limit to everything. But the reality is, I think it's unknown as to just how much growth is ahead of us, because I think our customers are going to teach us as much as we're going to teach them once we start deploying this product. And again, I think that will help as we look at scalability and help ourselves down the road of continuing to always providing what those ever-changing demands of the customers are.
It's great business to learn from your customers, and it's clear that Syngen's learning from Columbia and Columbia's learning from Syngen. And gentlemen, as we look to wrap up this insightful conversation, what would you like our listeners to take away with them? And I'll start with you, Ben, please.
I would say the big takeaway is that it touches on things I said before. It's that we're solving problems today that clearly are some of the biggest problems that need solving, but that is just the beginning. Because from there's everything else we just discussed. There's the additional vehicles. There's the lowering the marginal cost once you've got one type of vehicle, lowering the marginal cost to adopting the next, and then going and repeating that across sites. And then lo and behold, your staff has one approach for training for using autonomous vehicles, one set of interfaces that they need to learn, and essentially building a whole new skill set for the workforce that's working alongside these vehicles. And I think that's just a win-win type of scenario for the companies operating the vehicles, the people working with the vehicles, and for us as the suppliers of those vehicles and that technology, into just improving the way that we all work. And it's really just the beginning.
Scott, to bring us home, please.
Yeah, thanks. I think, the thing I've noticed, and we've really appreciated with working with Syngen, is this idea that the barriers to entry here using this approach are really low. You get the chance to use existing vehicle technology that most of your maintenance and technicians already understand how to take care of, operate, charge, et cetera. And we're just doing this wonderful overlay of a product that takes that existing product, if you will, existing known product, and turns it into part of your workforce overnight. And doing so is probably one of the biggest factors that I've seen. And when I talk to people about this and we show them the idea and they go, that's it? They sometimes expect this very dedicated, space age looking different type of a product that it needs to be. But the reality is it's here, it's now, it's today, and it's available.
Because Syngen and Columbia are clearly creating value for their customers and solving problems today. Today is tomorrow, tomorrow is today, and the future is the Columbia-Syngen partnership. Ben, Scott, thank you both for coming on SAE Tomorrow Today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to SAE Tomorrow Today. If you've enjoyed this episode and would like to hear more, please kindly rate, review, and let us know what topics you'd like for us to explore next. Be sure to join us next week as we host REE Automotive's Vice President of Engineering, Peter Dow. Peter will discuss REE's next generation of commercial mobility solutions and the team's shared passion for creating zero-emissions electric vehicles.
SAE International makes no representations as to the accuracy of the information presented in this podcast. The information and opinions are for general information only. SAE International does not endorse, approve, recommend, or certify any information, product, process, service, or organization presented or mentioned in this podcast.